First contact. The crystalline spires of the Celestian Diplomatic Center pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 moons. Naira stood before the High Council, her silvery skin shimming with anxiety, as she listened to her fate being decided. As the foremost healer of her generation, she knew her skills were valuable, too valuable to waste, as the council put it. The humans have agreed to our terms, First Speaker Venna announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. In exchange for their mining rights in the Caldan system, they will receive the services of one of our healers. You, Naira, have been chosen for this honor. Honor. The word felt hollow. Naira knew what this really was, a carefully worded form of servitude. The humans needed their advanced healing abilities to survive deep space exploration, and the Celestians needed the rare minerals only humans had the technology to mine. A trade of lives for resources, wrapped in diplomatic pleasantries. Commander Drake Harris arrived the next day aboard the Earth vessel Horizon. He cut an imposing figure in his midnight blue uniform, his dark skin marked with the subtle scaring of someone who had seen their share of battles. But it was his eyes that caught Naira's attention. Deep brown, and carrying a weight she hadn't expected to see in a human. Commander Harris, First Speaker Venna gestured gracefully. Your new healer awaits. Drake's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I don't believe in ownership of sentient beings, First Speaker. I'm here to offer Dr. Naira a position aboard my vessel, if she's willing. The chamber fell silent. No one had expected this response, least of all Naira. In all of Celestian history, humans had been viewed as aggressive, pragmatic creatures who took what they wanted. This show of respect was unprecedented. Commander, Venna's voice carried a note of warning. The agreement has already been settled. There is no need for such formalities. Drake turned to face Naira directly, ignoring the council entirely. Doctor, I run a research vessel. We explore the furthest reaches of known space, studying phenomena that could benefit both our peoples. Your healing abilities would be invaluable, but I want to be clear. You would be a member of my crew, not property. You would have the same rights and privileges as any other officer. Naira's bioluminescent markings pulsed with surprise. She studied his face, searching for any sign of deception, but found only sincerity. And if I refuse, then I'll find another solution. I won't force anyone to serve on my ship. The council chambers erupted in confused whispers. This wasn't how things were done. The carefully negotiated treaty didn't account for human commanders who refused to follow the script. Naira stepped forward, her decision made. I accept your offer, Commander, on my own terms. Drake nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. Welcome aboard, Dr. Naira. The journey to the Horizon revealed a ship unlike anything Naira had imagined. Instead of the stark, utilitarian design she'd expected, she found corridors lined with artwork from a dozen worlds. The crew, a mix of humans and other species, worked together with an easy familiarity that defied everything she'd been taught about human nature. Your quarters, Drake said, leading her to a spacious cabin with a view of the stars. The environmental controls are adjusted to Celestian preferences. Let me know if you need anything modified. Why? Naira finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why treat me differently than the agreement specified? Drake leaned against the doorframe, his expression thoughtful. Because history is full of people who followed unjust agreements without question. I'd rather be the one who chooses to do what's right, even if it complicates things. He straightened up. Get settled in. Tomorrow, I'll show you our medical bay. I think you'll find we have much to learn from each other. As Drake left, Naira stood at the viewport, watching her homeworld shrink into the distance. For the first time since the council's announcement, she felt something unexpected. Hope. Perhaps there was more to humans than her people had believed. Perhaps there was more to everything than she had been taught to believe. She had no way of knowing that this was just the beginning, that her presence on the horizon would set in motion events that would challenge the foundations of both their societies and force them to confront truths that had been buried for generations. Breaking chains. The first signs of trouble came 3 weeks into their mission. Naira was in the medical bay, demonstrating her healing abilities to Dr. Sarah Chen, the ship's chief medical officer, when the emergency alarms blared. Unidentified vessel approaching. The AI's calm voice announced, matching known signatures of syndicate raiders. Naira's luminescent markings pulsed with anxiety. The syndicate, a criminal organization that had plagued both human and Celestian space, was notorious for targeting ships carrying valuable cargo or personnel. Like a Celestian healer. "Doctor, secure the medical bay." Drake's voice came through the comm. "Naira, please report to the bridge." When she arrived, Drake stood at the tactical display, his face illuminated by the holographic projection of a sleek, predatory vessel approaching the horizon. "They're not here by accident," he said without turning. "Someone told them about you." The council wouldn't. Naira started, then stopped. She wasn't so sure anymore. "No," Drake agreed, "but someone in the diplomatic corps might have. The question is why." He finally turned to face her, his expression grim. "This goes deeper than a simple trade agreement, doesn't it?" Before Naira could respond, the ship shuddered under the impact of the raiders' first volley. "Shields holding at 80%, reported Lieutenant Park from Tactical. "Return fire," Drake ordered. "Target their weapons systems only. And get me a channel." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a scared Thraxian captain, his reptilian features twisted in a sneer. "Commander Harris, hand over the Celestian, and we'll let your ship pass unharmed." "I have a counteroffer," Drake replied calmly. "Leave now, and I won't have to explain to your employers why their precious cargo was lost when your ship suffered a catastrophic reactor failure." The Thraxian's expression flickered. "You wouldn't dare. The Celestian would never survive." "Check your scans again," Drake interrupted. "My ship's shields have been modified to withstand far worse than your outdated weapons. Can you say the same?" Naira watched in fascination as Drake's bluff played out. She could sense the tension on the bridge, but none of the crew betrayed it. They trusted their commander implicitly. The raider captain snarled something in his native tongue and cut the transmission. Moments later, their ship turned and jumped to FTL. "They'll be back," Drake said quietly. "With reinforcements." He turned to Naira. "I need to know what we're really dealing with here. Why would someone risk breaking the treaty just to capture you?" Naira's markings dimmed as she considered her response. "My healing abilities. They're different from other Celestians, more powerful. I can heal injuries that would be fatal even to my own people. The Council," she hesitated. "They've been studying me since I was young, trying to understand why. And now they've given you to a human ship." Drake shook his head. "It doesn't add up. Unless they wanted me off-world for a reason," Naira finished. "But why?" Drake's expression hardened. "Lieutenant Park, set course for the Keldon system. If we want answers, we start where this all began." He turned to Naira. "I promised you'd be treated as crew, not property. That means I'll protect you, even if it means going against both our governments to do it." Over the next few days, Naira found herself working closely with Drake and his senior staff, analyzing data and preparing for whatever awaited them in the Keldon system. She learned that Drake had a reputation for unconventional solutions and an almost legendary ability to survive impossible situations. But it was his unwavering commitment to his principles that truly impressed her. Late one night, she found him in the ship's observation lounge, studying star charts. "You're risking everything," she said quietly. "Your career, your ship, your crew, all for someone you barely know." Drake looked up, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "When I took this command, I made a promise to myself. I'd never let political expedience override what's right. The moment we start treating people as commodities to be traded, we lose something essential to who we are. even if those people aren't human. Especially then. He stood, facing her. Humanity learned its lessons about slavery and exploitation the hard way. I won't be part of repeating those mistakes with other species. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. Naira realized that in just a few weeks, this human had shown her more respect and dignity than centuries of Celestian tradition had allowed. "Commander," the AI interrupted, "long-range sensors are detecting multiple vessels converging on our position. Configuration matches both Syndicate and Celestian military ships." Drake's expression didn't change, but Naira could sense his mind racing through options. "They're working together," he said finally. "Your council and the Syndicate. The question is, what could be valuable enough to risk such an alliance?" Naira's markings pulsed with sudden understanding. "Not what," she whispered. "Who? The minerals in the Caldan system. They're not just for mining, are they? They have properties that enhance Celestian abilities. The Council wasn't giving me away. They were positioning me exactly where they needed me to be." Drake's eyes met hers, understanding dawning. "And now we're heading straight for their trap." He smiled grimly. "Good thing I never did like following other people's plans." As klaxons began to sound throughout the ship, Naira realized that her journey to freedom had only just begun. And somehow, this human commander, this man who defied expectations at every turn, had become her strongest ally in a game whose true stakes they were only beginning to understand. Rising storm. The horizon dropped out of FTL on the dark side of Caldan Ivy's largest moon, its engines powered down to minimal output. Through the bridge viewport, the gas giant's swirling storms cast an eerie glow across the ship's hull. 3 Celestian warships in high orbit, Lieutenant Park reported. 2 Syndicate vessels holding position near the mining facility. They haven't detected us yet. Drake stood at the tactical display, his features illuminated by the holographic representation of their predicament. "Show me the facility's layout." A 3-dimensional blueprint materialized, revealing a sprawling complex built into the moon's surface. Naira's markings pulsed as she studied it. "Those aren't standard mining configurations," she said. "Those are research laboratories." "Agreed." Drake nodded. "Dr. Chen, what do you make of these energy readings?" The ship's chief medical officer frowned at her display. "They're similar to the biological signatures Naira produces when she heals, but amplified. Significantly." "They're trying to weaponize it," Naira whispered, horror dawning in her voice. "The Council isn't just studying my abilities. They're trying to replicate them, enhance them. The minerals here must act as catalysts." Drake's jaw tightened, and the Syndicate provides deniability and distribution. If anything goes wrong, the Council can claim it was all a criminal operation. He turned to his crew. "Options. We could alert Earth Command," Lieutenant Park suggested, "and risk starting an interstellar war." Dr. Chen shook her head. "The political fallout would be catastrophic." "We do have one advantage," Drake said quietly. "They don't know we figured it out." He turned to Naira. "I won't make this decision for you. This is your people, your abilities they're trying to exploit. What do you want to do?" Naira's markings pulsed with determination. "We have to stop them. Not just for me, but for everyone they plan to use these weapons against." Drake nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "Lieutenant Park, prepare the infiltration pods. Dr. Chen, I want you and Naira to analyze those energy signatures. Find me a way to disrupt them. The rest of you, battle stations." The next hours were a blur of preparation. Naira worked with Dr. Chen, combining her knowledge of Celestian biology with the doctor's scientific expertise. What they discovered was worse than they'd imagined. "The process is unstable," Naira explained to Drake in the briefing room. "They're not just replicating healing abilities. They're trying to reverse them, create weapons that could tear apart living tissue at the cellular level." "But it's not working," Dr. Chen added. "The test subjects. The results are unpredictable. Catastrophic. Drake's expression darkened. They're going to keep trying until they succeed. Unless we stop them. He activated the tactical display. Here's the plan. We use the moon's magnetic field to mask our approach. 2 teams, one to the facility's power core, one to the research labs. We gather evidence, plant charges, and get out before they know we're there. The syndicate ships will notice an explosion, Park warned. Counting on it, Drake smiled grimly. When they do, they'll blame the Celestians for destroying evidence. With any luck, the Alliance falls apart before they can perfect the weapon. Naira studied Drake's face. You've done this before, haven't you? Gone against impossible odds. Let's just say I have experience in creative problem-solving. His expression softened slightly. Are you sure about this? Once we move, there's no going back. Your people will brand you a traitor. My people lost their way when they decided to turn healing into a weapon, Naira replied. Sometimes loyalty means standing against those who've forgotten what they're supposed to stand for. The infiltration was timed to coincide with a particularly violent storm in the gas giant's atmosphere, using the electromagnetic interference as cover. Drake led the team to the research labs, while Lieutenant Park headed for the power core. Naira moved through the familiar Celestian architecture, her heart heavy with the weight of what they might find. They discovered more than they'd bargained for. The laboratories held not just research data, but living test subjects, failed experiments kept in stasis. Among them were members of various species, including humans. They'd been experimenting for years, Naira realized, her markings dim with horror, long before the treaty. The mining agreement was just a cover to expand their operations. Drake was documenting everything with his tactical visor. Earth needs to see this. All of it. He paused, studying the terminal. Wait. These authorization codes, they go all the way to the top. Not just your council, but Earth government too. Someone on both sides has been orchestrating this. Before Naira could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Team 2, report, Drake commanded. Company. Park's voice crackled through the comm. Syndicate troops, heavily armed. They knew we were coming. It's a trap, Naira realized. But not for us. For them. Someone wanted this exposed, wanted the Alliance to break down. Drake's eyes met hers, understanding passing between them. They were pawns in an even larger game, one whose scope they were only beginning to glimpse. Change of plans, Drake announced. New priority. Get the test subjects out. Park, forget the charges. Redirect power to the stasis pods. We're taking everyone. The horizon can't hold that many, Park began. No, Drake agreed. But the Celestian warships can. Once they see what their leaders have been doing, we'll have all the allies we need. As they raced against time to save the victims of this twisted experiment, Naira realized that Drake had been right all along. Sometimes the greatest acts of loyalty came not from following orders, but from having the courage to defy them in service of something greater. The storm was rising, both literally and figuratively, and they were at its heart. But for the first time since this began, Naira felt something more powerful than fear, purpose. Whatever came next, they would face it together, human and Celestian, united by a shared understanding that some lines should never be crossed. The price of freedom. Alarms screamed through the facility as Drake and Naira worked to stabilize the stasis pods for transport. Each contained a victim of the Council's experiments, living proof of a conspiracy that spanned worlds and species. Hostile forces converging on your position. Park's voice crackled through the comm. 2 minutes out. Drake's fingers flew across the control panel. Status of the test subjects. Life signs stable, Naira reported, her markings pulsing with concentrated effort as she monitored the biological readings. But Commander, something's wrong. These readings, they're changing. A low tremor ran through the facility. On the monitoring screens, vital signs began to spike across multiple pods. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. The subjects are reacting to the power fluctuations. The stasis fields are failing. They knew, Naira whispered, horror dawning in her voice. The council knew we'd try to save them. They built in a failsafe. Drake's expression hardened. They'd rather kill the evidence than let it escape. He turned to Naira, his eyes intense. Can you heal them? All of them. At once, it would kill me. Not alone. Drake pulled something from his tactical vest, a crystal shard that pulsed with familiar energy. I took this from the lab. It's refined Caldan mineral. It amplifies Celestian abilities, right? Naira's markings flared. It's too dangerous. The amplification is unstable. That's why the weapons program failed. It could tear me apart at the cellular level, or it could save dozens of lives. Drake held out the crystal. Your choice. I won't order you to risk your life. The facility shook again. Through the viewport, they could see Syndicate troops approaching across the lunar surface. Behind them, the gas giant storms cast everything in an apocalyptic light. Naira took the crystal, its energy immediately resonating with her own. Help me reach them all. Drake didn't hesitate. He placed his hands over hers, and Naira felt something unexpected. A steadying presence, a strength that went beyond the physical. Human determination meeting Celestian ability. The crystal's power surged through her, amplifying her healing energy to levels she'd never imagined possible. But instead of tearing her apart, it found focus through Drake's unwavering support. Together, they became a conduit for something greater than either of them. Light flooded the chamber as healing energy pulsed through every stasis pod. Naira could feel each life she touched, each body she mended. And something else. Memories, fragments of the experiments they'd endured. The truth was worse than they'd imagined. They were creating sleeper agents. She gasped, the knowledge burning through her, the healing power. They found a way to reverse it, to hide it inside people. Living weapons that could be activated at will. Planted throughout both our societies. Drake understood, ready to be triggered when needed. The door exploded inward. Syndicate troops poured through, weapons raised, only to freeze at the sight before them. The chamber had become a nexus of light and energy, with Drake and Naira at its heart. Through the massive viewport, they could see the Celestian warships changing position, their weapons powering up. But they weren't aiming at the horizon. Multiple targets locked on the facility, Park reported. They're going to destroy it all, us included. Let them try. Drake's voice was steady, his hand still joined with Naira's. The crystal's power had created a shield around them, expanding to encompass the recovered test subjects. Chen, Park, get everyone to the emergency transporters. Now. As the medical team rushed to evacuate the survivors, Naira felt the crystal's power beginning to fracture. Commander, Drake, I can't hold this much longer. You don't have to. His eyes met hers. You've proven everything I believed about you, about what we can accomplish when we stop seeing each other as enemies or property. The first shots from the Celestian ships struck the facility's outer sections. Warnings blared as structures began to collapse. Transport complete, Chen reported. All survivors secured aboard the Horizon. Good. Drake's grip tightened on Naira's hands. Now comes the hard part. The crystal was reaching critical mass, its power building beyond containment. But in that moment, Naira understood what they had to do. It wasn't just about saving lives anymore. It was about sending a message that neither the Council nor their conspirators could ignore. She met Drake's gaze and saw the same realization there. Together, they could turn the crystal's destructive potential into something else. Not a weapon, but a beacon. As the facility crumbled around them, as forces converged to destroy the evidence of their crimes, Drake and Naira prepared to show both their peoples what real power looked like, not the power to destroy, but the power to reveal truth, to heal, to change. The storm above Caldan IV reached its peak, and in its heart, a new light was about to be born. A new dawn. The crystal's power erupted in a blinding cascade of energy, channeled through Drake, and Naira's combined will. Instead of destroying, it transformed, becoming a pulse of pure truth that rippled across space itself. Every ship, every station, every communications array within range was suddenly flooded with the unfiltered evidence of the Council's experiments. Not just data, but experience. Every person touched by the pulse felt the victims' memories, their pain, their resilience. The conspiracy laid bare in a way no one could deny or ignore. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, Park's voice cut through the aftermath. Earth fleet vessels. They're responding to the pulse. Drake and Naira stood in the ruins of the facility's lab, the spent crystal now dark between them. Through the viewport, they could see the Celestian warships holding position, their weapons powered down. The Syndicate vessels had already fled. "They'll come for us now," Naira said quietly, her markings dim with exhaustion. "Both our governments. What we've revealed, it changes everything." "Good." Drake's voice was firm. "Some things need to change." The facility's remaining systems sparked and failed around them as they made their way to the emergency extraction point. But they weren't running. Not anymore. Aboard the Horizon, the rescued test subjects were already beginning to share their stories. Humans, Celestians, and beings from a dozen other worlds, all united by their survival of the Council's attempts to weaponize healing itself. "Incoming transmission," Chen reported as Drake and Naira reached the bridge. "Multiple sources, Earth Command, the Celestian High Council, and something else, a signal I'd never seen before." "Put them all through," Drake ordered, standing tall despite his exhaustion. "It's time everyone talked to each other honestly." The view screen split into sections. Earth admirals, Celestian Council members, and most surprisingly, representatives from worlds they'd never seen before. Survivors of earlier experiments, now leaders of their own peoples, emerging from hiding. "You've destroyed decades of work toward peace." First Speaker Venna began, but her words rang hollow against the weight of truth still echoing through space. "No," Naira stepped forward. "We've exposed decades of work toward control. There's a difference. The treaty is void," Earth Command declared. "This act of aggression shows exactly why we need to change how we interact with each other." Drake interrupted. "You've all seen the truth now. Felt it. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Silence fell across all channels. In that moment, Naira realized that everything, her capture, her time with Drake, their discovery of the conspiracy, had led to this, a chance to reshape the relationship between their peoples. "We propose a new alliance," one of the unknown leaders spoke, "not built on treaties or trades, but on transparency and shared purpose. We who survived the experiments offer ourselves as witnesses and mediators." Over the next hours, as the Horizon maintained its position among the gathered fleets, something unprecedented took shape. The beginnings of a true coalition, founded not on power or fear, but on the shared recognition that no species had a monopoly on either virtue or vice. Drake and Naira stood together through it all, their presence a living testament to what cooperation could achieve. They had defied laws to uphold justice, broken chains to forge genuine bonds. "They're calling for your arrest," Park murmured during a brief recess in the negotiations. "Both of you, multiple jurisdictions." "Let them," Drake smiled slightly. "Sometimes you have to be willing to face judgment to change the system passing it." Naira's markings pulsed with renewed purpose. "And we won't face it alone." She was right. Already, ships from various worlds were moving to protect the Horizon. The survivors they'd rescued were testifying, their stories impossible to ignore. What had begun as one commander's refusal to treat a person as property had grown into something that would reshape galaxies. "There will be resistance," Naira said quietly. "Those who profit from the old ways won't give up easily." "Good thing we're stubborn," Drake replied. "All of us." He gazed out at the assembled fleet, at the representatives still arguing and negotiating on their screens. "This isn't an ending. It's a beginning." As if to emphasize his words, the storms of Caldan ivy began to clear, the gas giant's turbulent atmosphere settling into new patterns. Above its scared moon, ships from a dozen worlds held position, not in battle formation now, but in a tentative peace born of shared understanding. The price of freedom had been high, but its rewards promised to be greater still. In defying the laws that would have bound them, Drake and Mira had helped forge something stronger. Principles that could unite rather than divide, heal rather than harm. As the first official declarations of the new coalition began to take shape, as the survivors shared their hopes for a different future, Drake and Naira exchanged a glance. They had started as captor and captive, become allies, and emerged as something more, pioneers of a new way forward. The stars seemed brighter somehow, witnessing the birth of this new dawn. And somewhere in that light, the truth they had fought to reveal continued to pulse, that the strongest bonds are those we choose to forge, and the greatest laws are those that recognize the dignity in all beings. The storm had passed. The real work was just beginning.